It is the month of Halloween, so I thought it would be apropos to take a look at some of the upcoming horror titles that have my interest. Now, these aren't just going to be the horror games coming this month, there are a few. However, I wanted to open the doors and look at every horror game that is looking pretty good, and there's quite a few, so if you're a fan of horror games, there's a lot to pick from. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Starting things off, I do want to mention one that is going to be coming up relatively soon, and that is Amnesia Rebirth. This is a game that I am incredibly excited for, being done by Frictional, of course, the studio that brought you the first Amnesia game in the Dark Descent and the excellent Soma. I absolutely love Soma. Now with Amnesia Rebirth, a new descent into darkness from the creators of the iconic series, a harrowing journey through desolation and despair, exploring the limits of human resilience. Just based on that description, that has piqued my interest quite a bit. It's a first-person narrative horror experience. Explore environments and uncover their histories, overcome puzzles that stand in your way, carefully manage your limited resources, both physical and mental. This one will be out October 20th, so definitely be excited for that. Next up, we have one that I think everybody and their mother is excited for, Resident Evil Village. This is one that is shaping up to be one of the killer titles in 2021. Experience survival horror like never before in the 8th major installment in the Resident Evil franchise, Resident Evil Village, with detailed graphics, intense first-person action, and masterful storytelling. The terror has never felt more realistic. You've got familiar faces and new foes. Chris Redfield has typically been a hero in the Resident Evil series, but his appearance in Resident Evil Village seemingly shrouds him in a more sinister motive, so it'll be interesting to see how that shakes out. But Resident Evil has had a long-standing narrative thread that has tied together pretty nicely, and I think it'll come together even more so in Resident Evil Village. Next up, we have Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2. Now, this is one you could be iffy on whether or not you call it a straight-up horror game. Seems to be more action-oriented, but definitely will have some eerie vibes to it. Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 1 was a game that I thought was pretty good. Unfortunately, never really got that recognition, but one of those games that developed like a cult following over the years. This one is written by the creative mind behind the original Bloodlines. Live out your vampire fantasy in a city filled with intriguing characters that react to your choices. Look, Vampire was awesome a few years ago. If we get more quality vampire games, that's something I'd be all about. Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2 was originally scheduled for 2020, unfortunately delayed until 2021, but still, hopefully the game turns out good and we can see this be a long-standing franchise for the foreseeable future. Next up, we have Remothered Broken Porcelain. Broken Porcelain brings an abundance of welcome changes to the series, introducing new gameplay and storytelling elements that breathe new life into the characters and an unprecedented level of immersion in a haunting adventure. Perfect for both new and returning fans to the series. This one's got a very, very creepy vibe to it, and I think that's something that horror fans are definitely going to enjoy. Intense stealth gameplay, investigate and escape, captivating characters, and thrilling psychological plot. So if you are more into a psychological horror, this will be right up your alley. This one will actually be out in a few days on PC, October 13th. Next up, we have the Dark Pictures Anthology, Little Hope. This is, of course, being done by Supermassive Games, the guys that brought you Until Dawn back on the PlayStation 4. This time around, this game is being published by Bandai Namco Entertainment, this series, I should say. Trapped and isolated in the abandoned town of Little Hope, 4 college students and their teacher must escape the nightmarish apparitions that relentlessly pursue them through an impenetrable fog. This one also has a very realistic look, but the vibe you get from it, just based on some of the image, super, super creepy, and I think it's going to be one that people will enjoy. Man of Medan wasn't an absolute home run, so hopefully this one will be a little bit better, but Man of Medan I still thought had some enjoyable moments. This one will be out October 29th. Next up, we have The Medium. Discover a dark mystery only a medium can solve. Travel to an abandoned communist resort and use your unique psychic abilities to uncover its deeply disturbing secrets, solve dual reality puzzles, survive encounters with sinister spirits, and explore 2 realities at the same time. Being done by Bloober Team, a very, very talented studio. Excited to see what they can do with The Medium. If you don't know, Bloober Team also did Observer, and that was a super psychological game, so we'll see how this shakes out when it does drop later this year. Still tentatively scheduled for that. Next up, we have Monstrum II, an asymmetric multiplayer survival horror that pits a team of prisoners against a terrifying monster. You know, the typical style of gameplay. We've seen this quite a bit. It combines tense first-person stealth gameplay and fast-paced adrenaline-pumping chases with a procedurally generated environment that changes with each playthrough. And it's one that's probably going to have a good bit of replayability as well, but excited to see how this one shakes out. And it is currently scheduled for a release later this year. We'll see how that shakes out because we don't have an official date, and sometimes I'm a little bit skeptical when we do get later into October, but hopefully we do see it dropping sooner rather than later. Next up, we have one of the more iconic horror franchises these days. The Outlast Trials will be coming. Trials is a survival horror game that you can play by yourself or with other people online. You'll have to survive the twisted, sadistic, and bizarre experiments of the corporation alone or in a group of up to 4. Obviously, Outlast is a franchise that horror fans have definitely gotten a bit attached to. Some of the better horror games that you're going to find on the market. Was a big fan of Outlast 1. Outlast 2 was great as well. Hopefully, Outlast Trials can deliver a pretty new and unique experience as well. The cooperative element is definitely going to be exciting, so we'll see how that turns out. No release date at this point, but it is scheduled for sometime in 2021. Alright, next up, here's a pretty exciting game, In Sound Mind. This is probably one a lot of you guys haven't heard of, but it's a psychological horror title, and In Sound Mind is an imaginative first-person psychological horror with frenetic puzzles, unique boss fights, and original music by the living Tombstone. Journey within the inner workings of the one place you can't seem to escape, your own mind. So, obviously, this is very much of a psychological style of horror games. There's already a demo available on Steam, so check that out if that does interest you, and you can download that for free, of course, but the full game will be out sometime in 2021. One to definitely keep an eye on, and one that hasn't been getting a lot of attention, in all honesty. Next up, coming from Duality Games, is Unholy. A mother in search of her abducted child ventures through morbid streets of the last city on a dying planet, challenges a repressive regime under which your whole life is determined by which social castle you belong to. This game, from a presentation standpoint, super dark. I have to say that right off the bat. Like, this is one of the darker horror games that I've seen so far. Artwork looks great. Game itself takes place on a desolate planet where last members of the human race live in the last city. The sprawling metropolis is divided between castes, and every day is shrouded in fear. Fear of being noticed by higher castes, fear of being killed by a mysterious plague that is slowly consuming the city of fear. I mean, how relatable is that these days? Fear of being caught by one of the maniacs or mysterious beasts that are going through the streets at night. Gameplay is a mix of horror and stealth game where for each challenge can be overcome in several different ways, so you really have to play to the style that you want to play. Explore a rich story behind the last city and the desperate quest to save herself and her child. Immerse yourself in a uniquely dark environment never before seen. Multiple ways to approach the game, and take good care of your physical and mental health. Kind of cool to see mental health becoming more of a forefront in these horror games. I think it's a very unique layer that they can add to these games, and we'll see how Unholy turns out when it does drop in 2021. Alright, next up, coming from Tarsier Studios, Little Nightmares is getting a sequel in Little Nightmares 2. Little Nightmares 1 was awesome. This is more of a puzzle platformer, and yes, it definitely does have horror elements, even if at first sight you don't think of it as a horror game, because it's not presented as, you know, an over-the-top super scary game. But Little Nightmares 2 definitely has some eerie elements to it, and the gameplay itself is very, very good. Go back and play the first one because that one was so good. Little Nightmares 2, I hope they can follow up with it with a quality title. It'll be out February 11th of 2021 on all major platforms. Again, hopefully this one delivers just like the first game, and hopefully this gets more recognition as a high-quality horror title or just a puzzle platformer, because it's a great game and doesn't get a lot of attention. At least the first one didn't. Alright, next up we have Sons of the Forest. Obviously, The Forest is one of the more popular games you're going to find on PC. It's been ported to other platforms as well. This was revealed at the Game Awards last year, and we still don't have much information about the game, so it's still a little bit shrouded, but given the title of the game, given the franchise it's in, it's going to be one that's definitely going to have a lot of hype once we start knowing more and more about it. Hopefully the game will be out sometime in 2021 or 2022. Looks very creepy. Visuals look awesome from the little bit of gameplay that we did see. It looks absolutely amazing from that standpoint. Really looks like a next-gen game. We'll see if they can port it to current-gen platforms. I imagine it's going to be PC and next gen, however. Alright, next up, we have Saturnalia, a survival horror adventure as an ensemble cast explore an isolated village of ancient ritual. Its labyrinth roads change each time you lose all your characters. Described as a horror investigation title, this one definitely from an aesthetic standpoint has a way different look than all of the other horror games that I talked about. It has this shadowy look going on for it, and that looks really cool. At the very least, it's going to set itself apart from everything else, and given we've got so many horror games coming out, that's definitely something that's going to be advantageous for them. Game is scheduled for Q4 of 2020. Again, considering it's mid-October at this point, we'll see if that does stick, but if not, hopefully early 2021 at the latest. Next up, we have Once Upon a Time in Roswell. Once Upon a Time in Roswell is a first-person psychological horror that chronicles the story of the family's disappearance in 1947 in Roswell, USA. Explore the home while witnessing horrific flashbacks and otherworldly entities. Seems like this archetype of figuring out what happened to a family is something that's been done more and more in horror games. This one, from a visual standpoint, looks great. Graphically, Definitely looks like more of a high-end horror game, so we'll see how that turns out. It touts to explore a deep story, investigate, find evidence, and play through different memories of what could have happened to the family and survive, sneak past, and survive various enemies that may want more than just your life. This one will be out late 2020. Again, another instance where we'll see if that sticks, but game definitely looks pretty cool. And that's going to conclude this video. That's every horror game that I could dig up and ones that you should definitely have your eyes on and your radar covering them. Amnesia Rebirth out October 20th. That's definitely the one that I would have my eyes on for the near future. Remothered Broken Porcelain also coming out very soon. So some exciting games dropping hopefully in the next year or so, and hopefully you guys stay on lock with those titles if you are a horror game fan. Sound off with all of your thoughts in the comment section down below. Thank you for watching and goodbye. Hey guys, we hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, make sure to hit the subscribe button, and if you're already subscribed, do us a favor and hit the bell icon. This way you'll be notified whenever we post a new video. That's the best way to keep up with all of our uploads, and we usually try to upload 2 videos a day. And with the bell icon hit, you'll be notified whenever we do upload a video. As always, thanks for watching.